$27 trillion. Not invested, not working, not earning a return, not funding businesses or building infrastructure or powering any economy anywhere on Earth. Just sitting, frozen, locked inside a system that was designed in the 1970s and has not fundamentally changed since. Sitting in accounts that exist for one reason and one reason only, to paper over the fact that the global banking system cannot move money across borders without preloading the destination first. $27 trillion. Idle. Every single day. That number has appeared in the background of every major conversation about blockchain finance for years. Mentioned briefly, referenced once, then moved past. Because the people who cite it rarely stop to explain what it actually means, why it exists, or what happens to the global financial system, and to one specific asset, the day that frozen capital gets unlocked. Today, we stop and explain it, all of it. Because buried inside the Nostro Vostro problem is the clearest, most mathematically precise explanation for why XRP exists, what it was specifically engineered to do, and why the infrastructure now being assembled by the DTCC, Ripple, the Royal Bank of Canada, TCS BAN CS, and the Bank of Canada is not a coincidence. It is a coordinated solution to a problem that has cost the global economy trillions of dollars every single year for 50 years. And the solution requires a bridge asset. A specific kind of bridge asset. One with properties that almost no other instrument on Earth currently possesses. Welcome back. I'm the calm analyst. No hype, no emotion, just the architecture underneath the noise. Let's go deep on the problem that XRP was built to solve, and the moment we are approaching when that solution goes from theoretical to operational at global scale. To understand why this moment matters, you first need to understand the problem at a level most crypto content never actually explains. When a bank in Canada wants to send money to a bank in Germany, you might assume the process is simple. Bank A sends money, Bank B receives money. Done. But that is not how the correspondent banking system works. Not even close. Here is the actual process. The Canadian bank and the German bank almost certainly do not have a direct relationship with each other. So the Canadian bank uses an intermediary, a correspondent bank that has relationships in both countries. That correspondent bank charges fees for the service. It also requires that both sides of the transaction have pre-funded accounts sitting at the correspondent bank before the transfer happens. Those pre-funded accounts are called Nostro accounts on one side and Vostro accounts on the other. Nostro meaning ours, the account your bank holds abroad. Vostro meaning yours, the account the foreign bank holds with you. Every bank that wants to participate in cross-border payments must maintain these pre-funded pools of capital in every currency and every jurisdiction it wants to reach, sitting there, doing nothing, waiting to be used for the next transaction. And when the transaction happens, the pool gets drawn down on one side and replenished on the other, usually through a slow, multi-step reconciliation process that takes anywhere from 1 to 6 business days depending on the corridor. Multiply this across every bank in every country, in every currency pair, across every correspondent relationship in the global financial system, and you arrive at $27 trillion in pre-funded idle capital, locked, unproductive, dead weight in the machinery of global commerce. And here is the part that should genuinely make your blood boil as someone who understands what money is supposed to do. That 27 trillion is not a rounding error. It is not an acceptable cost of doing business. It is a $27 trillion tax on the global economy paid every single day by every business that moves money across borders, by every family that sends a remittance to a relative in another country, by every institution that operates internationally, paid not to receive a service, but simply to compensate for the fact that the system is too slow to be trusted without pre-funding. That is the Nostro trap, and it has been running at a cost of trillions for 50 years. Now let's do the math that the crowd ignores, because this is where the XRP thesis stops being a narrative and becomes a structural inevitability. The Nostro trap exists because of one fundamental property of the correspondent banking system: time. Settlement takes days. And when settlement takes days, counterparty risk accumulates in that window. Banks cannot trust that the money will arrive. So they require pre-funding. Pre-funding requires idle capital. Idle capital costs trillions. Remove the time. Eliminate the settlement lag. Make cross-border value transfer instant, final, and irreversible. And the entire rational basis for pre-funding disappears. If money moves from Canada to Germany in 8 seconds with cryptographic confirmation of settlement, no intermediary needs a pre-funded buffer. The buffer was always a hedge against time. Remove the time, remove the need for the hedge, and $27 trillion in frozen capital gets unlocked. That is not a projection. That is logic. And Ripple's on-demand liquidity product is the mechanism that makes that logic operational. Here is how ODL works. A financial institution wants to move $1 million from Canada to Germany. Instead of drawing on a pre-funded Nostro account, the institution converts Canadian dollars into XRP. That XRP moves across the XRP ledger, settling in 3 to 5 seconds. At the destination, the XRP is converted into euros and deposited into the recipient's account. The entire process takes seconds. No pre-funded account required. No idle capital sitting in a Nostro buffer. No correspondent bank taking a fee for access to their pre-funded liquidity pool. And here is the design math that makes this structurally elegant in a way that most people miss entirely. The XRP used in that transaction is not stored at the destination. It is not accumulated. It is used and released. A working float that serves its purpose and returns to the available supply. But as more corridors open, as more institutions adopt ODL, as more transaction volume flows through the network, the demand for XRP as a working float at any given moment increases. Now add the supply constraint, 100 billion XRP, fixed cap, approximately 55 to 57 billion in circulation, 1 billion released from escrow monthly, with the majority relocked. The liquid tradable supply is not growing. It is effectively stable at best, contracting over time as institutional custody removes tokens from active circulation. Here is the bridge asset math. To replace even 1% of the $27 trillion in Nostro capital with XRP-based ODL liquidity, you need XRP available as working float in those corridors. At $2 per XRP, 1% of $27 trillion, $270 billion requires 135 billion XRP as float. But there are only 55 to 57 billion in circulation. The math does not work at current prices. The system cannot function at scale with XRP at these levels. The price has to adjust to make the float requirement achievable with the available supply. This is not a prediction. This is not a Moonboy fantasy. This is an engineering requirement embedded in the design of the solution. If XRP is the bridge and the bridge needs to carry a certain volume and the supply is fixed, then price is the variable that balances the equation. It has to be. There is no other variable available. The math does not lie, and the math has always pointed here. Now let's stack the institutional evidence, because the Nostro trap is not just being described as a problem anymore. It is being actively dismantled by the most important financial institutions in the world, and the infrastructure being built to dismantle it runs directly through Ripple. Start with the live demonstration that happened on stage in front of an audience with real money. A Canadian bank with $43 billion in assets, a German bank called Rise Bank, 1,000 Canadian dollars, converted at a live rate of 1.47 Canadian to euro, a receiving fee of €1, settlement confirmed on the administrative dashboard at the destination bank. Time elapsed, 8 seconds, not 2 to 6 business days, 8 seconds. That transaction was not a simulation. It was not a controlled test environment. It was real money. 2 real banks, 1 real cross-border corridor, and it settled in the time it takes to read 1 sentence out loud. The Nostro buffer for that corridor was not needed. The correspondent bank was not involved. The pre-funding requirement was eliminated. 8 seconds. Now scale that. The Royal Bank of Canada, the largest bank in Canada, one of the most systemically important financial institutions in North America, is confirmed as one of 7 core governance banks for Ripple's network, alongside Bank of America Merrill Lynch, Bank of Tokyo Mitsubishi, the 4th largest bank in the world, Santander Group, Standard Chartered, CIBC, Westpac Australia, 7 banks, chosen deliberately for global geographic spread, chosen to provide governance input from every major financial market on Earth. Ask yourself this brutal question. Why would the 4th largest bank in the world, Bank of Tokyo Mitsubishi, participate in the governance structure of a payment infrastructure company if that company was not going to process significant volume for them? Banks at that level do not participate in governance for technology they find interesting. They participate in governance for technology they are deploying at scale. Governance participation is a commitment, not a compliment. Then look at what the Bank of Canada is doing in parallel. Canada's central bank just completed its first tokenized bond pilot, involving the central bank, involving major commercial banks, testing how bond settlement, currently taking multiple days, currently requiring its own version of Nostro-style pre-funding for institutional counterparties, could be compressed to near-instant finality on distributed ledger infrastructure. Central banks do not run tokenization pilots for academic purposes. They run them because they are studying infrastructure they intend to recommend or deploy. And when a central bank is studying instant settlement infrastructure at the same moment that the largest commercial bank in its jurisdiction is confirmed as a governance partner for the company building that infrastructure, those two things are not separate events. They are parallel tracks of the same preparation. The DTCC has already added Hidden Road, a firm Ripple acquired, to its back-end infrastructure. TCS BAN CS, which processes $40 trillion in securities annually across more than 100 countries, has Ripple documented in its Quartz Gateway architecture. The OCC, the Fed, and the FDIC have jointly cleared U.S. banks to hold tokenized assets on their balance sheets with no regulatory penalty. The institutions are not positioning for a future where this might happen. They are building the infrastructure for a present where this is already being deployed. Here is where the timing becomes critical, because understanding when the Nostro trap gets dismantled is as important as understanding why it will be. The DTCC has received its regulatory no-action letter and has stated publicly that it plans to launch its tokenization service in the second half of this year. When that service goes live, participating institutions can ask for their assets to be tokenized and deposited into the wallet of their choice. Across the multiple Layer 1 blockchains, the DTCC has confirmed it is partnering with for that infrastructure. The DTCC has also stated explicitly that its collateral app chain, designed to allow collateral to move across the world at the speed of the network, will release capital and remove friction from the market. Read that statement carefully. Release capital. The capital being released is the same capital currently frozen in Nostro and Vostro buffers. When collateral can move at network speed, pre-funding buffers become unnecessary. The $27 trillion starts to move. The Clarity Act is simultaneously working through Congress with bipartisan support and active White House engagement. Patrick McHenry confirmed the CFTC-related portion has already cleared the Senate committee. The stablecoin framework under the Genius Act is in final negotiation. Regulatory clarity, the last remaining barrier between cautious institutional capital and full deployment, is measured in months, not years. Japan's VTUP trade finance platform is already live on the XRP ledger, targeting a market that moves $9 to $10 trillion per year. Even 1% capture of that market equals $90 to $100 billion in annual ledger volume. G-Treasury, acquired by Ripple for approximately $1 billion, already processes $16 trillion in annual payment flows across 1,000 corporate clients in 160 countries. MasterCard is piloting RLUSD settlement on the XRP ledger for card transactions, treating stablecoins as native currency on its network. These are not future catalysts. They are live systems being scaled. The question is not whether the volume comes. The question is what happens to a fixed supply bridge asset when the volume arrives faster than the market has priced in. Let me speak directly to the people who have been watching this space for a long time and are feeling the weight of a price that does not yet reflect any of this. I understand the frustration. The math I just walked you through has been partially true for years. The Nostro problem has been described for years. The XRP solution has been described for years. And the price has moved in ways that often had nothing to do with any of it. But here is what is different right now, and I want you to hear this clearly. The difference is not that the narrative has improved. The difference is that the infrastructure is operational, not proposed, not planned, not in a white paper, operational. A Canadian bank sent real money to Germany in 8 seconds. The DTCC has its no action letter and a launch timeline. Hidden Road is integrated into DTCC backend systems. TCS BAN CS has Ripple in its architecture serving $40 trillion in securities. Japan has a live trade finance platform on the XRP ledger. The Bank of Canada ran a tokenized bond pilot. The OCC cleared banks to hold tokenized assets. Every one of those is a past tense statement, not a future aspiration, a documented, completed operational reality. The crowd looks at the chart and sees a price that has not responded to any of it. And they conclude that the thesis is wrong, that institutions are not serious, that the technology is not being adopted. That conclusion is exactly backwards. The price has not responded yet because the volume has not arrived yet. The infrastructure is being installed. The pipes are being laid. The settlement rails are being connected. But the flood of institutional volume that will flow through those pipes The volume that displaces Nostro buffers, that settles bonds instantly, that processes trade finance in seconds instead of days. That volume has not started flowing at scale yet. When it does, the price of the bridge asset does not gradually reflect it. It reprices to meet the engineering requirement. And the engineering requirement, as we established in the math, is not a small number. The silence right now is not the silence of a thesis failing. It is the silence of a predator perfectly still before the strike. The infrastructure is in place. The partnerships are signed. The regulatory gates are opening. The $27 trillion in frozen capital is being targeted by the most powerful financial institutions in the world, using infrastructure that runs on the XRP ledger. Being early in this market has always felt exactly like being wrong, right up until the moment reality catches up. Here is what I want you to carry with you from everything we covered today. $27 trillion sits frozen in Nostro and Vostro accounts because cross-border settlement takes days. XRP's on-demand liquidity product eliminates the pre-funding requirement by settling in seconds. The math of replacing even 1% of that frozen capital with XRP working float implies price levels that are not compatible with current valuations, because fixed supply means price is the only variable that can balance the equation. The Royal Bank of Canada, Bank of America, Bank of Tokyo Mitsubishi, Santander, Standard Chartered, CIBC, and Westpac are all governance partners in Ripple's network. 7 banks spanning every major financial market on Earth. The Bank of Canada is testing instant bond settlement infrastructure. The DTCC is launching its tokenization service this year. TCS BaNCS has Ripple in its architecture. Hidden Road is live inside the DTCC. Japan has an operational trade finance platform on the XRP ledger. The Clarity Act is in final negotiation with White House support. The Nostro trap has run for 50 years. It has cost the global economy trillions in idle, frozen, unproductive capital. The solution that eliminates it has been built, tested, demonstrated live, and is being scaled by the most important financial institutions in the world. The trap is about to spring open. And when $27 trillion in frozen capital starts moving through rails that require a bridge asset with fixed supply, the math takes over, and the math does not negotiate. Comment Nostro below if you made it all the way through this one. I want to know who is studying the problem deeply enough to understand why the solution matters. Stay patient, stay rational. $27 trillion is frozen. The key that unlocks it exists. The institutions that need it are already holding that key. We don't wait for the future, we plan for it.